We can replace you tomorrow. HR laughed during my performance review, twirling a pen like a baton. Fresh graduates would kill for your role. Something inside me clicked into place. Not rage, clarity. I set my shoulders, slid the envelope I'd brought across the table, and said, "Fine, then find someone else." His smirk faltered. "What's this?" "My resignation," I said, effective immediately. "And there's an attachment he didn't bother to look. Security will escort you to collect your things." I stood without trembling. 7 years of early mornings and midnight fixes will teach you how to move with steady hands. 7 years of building a system that caught what other people's eyes forgot. 7 years of telling the truth nobody wanted to hear until ignoring it became expensive, replaceable. The word sat between us like a dare. The conference room's fluorescent lights were unflattering to everyone, but they were particularly cruel to the easy confidence on his face. I'd seen that look too many times. People who think process is a spreadsheet, rather than the thin line between safety and catastrophe. I took the copy of my resignation from the table and tapped the second page. "That attachment matters." He made a show of sighing. "We'll manage, Mandy." Security walked me to my desk as if I might pocket a server on the way out. I fit my life into a cardboard box. Photos, a coffee mug, the old lucky screwdriver my dad gave me when I was 16. "Because the smallest turns decide what runs and what fails," he'd said. He was a mechanic, not a philosopher, but sometimes there's no difference. I paused at the door to the lab. My lab. The place where I'd built the anomaly detection sequences, where temperature, vibration, and timing were not numbers, but sentences telling me when a device was lying. There were rules in those sequences and exceptions to the rules, and a rhythm you could feel only after breaking it 100 times and listening to the music of the fix. I'd tried to teach that music. I was told to simplify it into bullet points. Outside, the wind carried the smell of rain and hot asphalt. Freedom and ache tangled in my chest. On impulse, I turned my phone to silent. No last minute please. No quick questions. I put the box in my trunk and let the door thud shut on 7 years. I drove without a destination, the city sliding past like a tape I'd already watched. Everyone thinks the moment you quit is pure triumph. They don't tell you about the hollow afterward, the echo of routines you no longer own. I ended up at Riverside Park, the place I went on the rare days when lunch meant sunlight and not a keyboard. Ducks skimmed the surface of the water in clean, purposeful lines. No drama, just motion that made sense. That's what I've always chased. Motion that makes sense. I didn't plan on this job. When my marriage collapsed, I needed something close enough to my daughter's school and predictable enough to shop for groceries without doing calculus. Quality control sounded simple. It wasn't. It was triage and prophecy and humility. It was crawling inside a system until you felt where it would betray itself. It was telling managers that a green light wasn't green, and then proving it on the floor while a production schedule glared at you like a stopwatch. I learned who listened. More importantly, I learned who pretended to. My phone buzzed against the bench slat. Then again. I let it vibrate until it stopped. The silence that followed was loud. For the first time in years, nothing was my problem. The thought felt reckless and a little indecent, like laughing at a funeral. Still, a smile tugged at my mouth. Replaceable? Sure. I drove home while the sky soaked itself and wrung out over the windshield. By the time I reached my building, Georgia from the front desk had a package waiting. "You look lighter," she said, eyeing my empty hands. "Just shedding an old skin," I told her. Up in my apartment, I set the box on the kitchen table and stared at it as if it might hiss. I poured tea, then finally checked my phone. 23 missed calls, 36 texts. The previews read like a chorus line breaking step. "Can you confirm the release parameters for the cardiac monitors? Mandy, QA is flagging everything. Did you change the sequence? Hey, where's the final validation log? We can't run the script. Urgent. Board wants to know why pass rates dropped 40% in 1 hour. Mandy, please pick up. Maya, production. I leaned against the counter, the kettle clicking as it cooled. They hadn't opened the attachment. If they had, they'd know the validation log rotated based on 3 thresholds and that the pass-fail window contracted when the calibration drifted. They'd know the update I rolled last month needed a 2-step initialization, or else the alarms would see ghosts where there were none and miss the thing that bites. They'd know the system worked. They'd know how to listen to it. I scrolled to an email from HR. Short, crisp, a template trying to pass as a human. We acknowledge your resignation. Your access will be terminated EOD. Please return all company property. No mention of the second page. No attachment received. A second email followed. Same sender, less confident. Mandy, quick question. Where can we find the updated anomaly thresholds? I put my phone down and let the quiet stretch. Somewhere across town, someone was finally opening a PDF labeled Transition Protocol. Read before touching anything. Somewhere, a team was ignoring it while a manager asked for workarounds. Somewhere, green lights were turning yellow and no one knew why. Is this cruel? The question found me before the guilt did. Then I remembered what kindness had looked like in that conference room. A laugh. A pen. The word replaceable tossed like confetti. Kindness isn't letting people treat your expertise like air. It's making sure the air keeps the people who need it alive. My tea steamed in a soft ribbon. I raised the mug to my lips and let the heat settle my throat. Out of habit, I opened my laptop. The cursor blinked on a blank page that asked what I wanted next. For the first time in years, I didn't have to answer right away. My phone buzzed again. A voicemail, breathless. Mandy, it's Maya. We can't ship. Everything's failing on final. This doesn't make sense. Please, just tell me where to start. I close my eyes. The smallest turns decide what runs and what fails. They said they could replace me tomorrow. By the end of today, the department would prove them wrong. The next morning, sunlight spilled across my kitchen floor, but my phone's screen was already glowing with chaos. 47 missed calls, 61 texts, 3 voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize. I scrolled through them slowly, sipping coffee as if I had all the time in the world. System stuck in fail loop. Can't override. Production has stopped completely. We need you back, Mandy. If you're there, please call me. This is urgent. A message from HR caught my eye. Please confirm the details of the attachment you mentioned. It seems we can't locate it in our system. Of course they couldn't. I imagined Devin, head of HR, smug as always, tossing my resignation letter aside the second I'd left the room. He wouldn't have noticed the neatly labeled PDF stapled behind it. Or maybe he had noticed and assumed it was fluff. That was his specialty, treating anything technical as if it were paperwork. I opened my laptop. Notifications flashed from LinkedIn, a few recruiter messages I'd ignored for years. My resume hadn't been updated since before my divorce. I should have felt nervous, staring at a blank professional future. Instead, I felt strangely steady. At 9 sharp, my phone rang again. This time, it was Maya from production. Her voice trembled when I answered. Mandy, please. We can't ship. Every validation sequence is rejecting clean units. Engineering says the thresholds are corrupted. Devin's blaming us and the board is furious. What did you change? Nothing corrupted, I said, stirring sugar into my coffee. The system's working exactly the way it's supposed to. Then why are we failing everything? Because you're not following the protocols. Silence hummed at the other end. Then Maya whispered, The attachment? Yes. Her breath caught. Devin told us it was irrelevant. I almost laughed. Then he was wrong. I hung up before she could say more. Around noon, someone knocked on my door. It wasn't security this time. It was Jordan from engineering, hair messy, shirt untucked, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. He held a laptop under one arm. Please, he said, skipping any preamble. We've been at it all night. Nothing works. You left instructions, right? Can you just Walk me through them? I stepped aside and he set the laptop on my table. I didn't invite him to sit. Show me what you've been doing. His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up test results. Error after error flashed red. We reset thresholds, we recalibrated sensors, we even brought in an external auditor. They couldn't figure it out either. It's like the system is speaking another language. It is, I said quietly. My language. Jordan rubbed his face. You built it. You can fix it. I shook my head. I built it, yes. But it's documented. Thoroughly. If you'd read the attachment, you'd know how to tune the system in stages, not all at once. You'd know that failing units trigger a hidden baseline recalibration. That's why everything looks broken now. It's adapting, waiting for the human hand it trusts to reset it. His jaw tightened. So you're saying none of us can do it? I'm saying none of you are willing to learn. After he left, I sat with the quiet for a long time. My father's voice echoed in memory. The smallest turns decide what runs and what fails. He'd said it when I was 16, handing me a rusted carburetor. He meant machines, but it applied to people too. Devin's smallest turn, a laugh, a dismissal, ignoring a second page, was now collapsing an entire department. By late afternoon, my inbox was full of offers to return as a consultant. The rates doubled with each email. HR tried flattery first. We value your expertise and want to discuss a more strategic role. Then, urgency. Production losses are mounting by the hour. Please respond immediately. Then, desperation. Name your price. Anything. Just come back. Each message filled me with a satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. They thought they could replace me tomorrow. Today, they couldn't even replace me for an hour. That evening, I took a walk by the river. The air smelled of wet earth and spring leaves. My phone buzzed, but I ignored it, letting the vibration fade against my leg. Families strolled past with ice creams, couples laughed, joggers kept pace with the fading sun. I felt a strange mix of envy and relief. For so long, I'd been defined by crises, always the one to fix what others broke. Now the crisis wasn't mine. I had a choice. When I returned home, a voicemail waited. This one wasn't from HR or engineering. It was from Alan, the company president. His voice was rough, tired. Mandy, I only just learned about your resignation. Devin failed to inform me until today. I need to speak with you directly. Please, for the sake of the company, call me back. For the first time, I hesitated. Alan wasn't Devin. He'd once thanked me personally for catching a flaw in a shipment that could have bankrupted them. He wasn't perfect, but he'd listened. Still, the truth was simple. I'd given them the chance to respect me. They laughed instead. I set my phone face down and whispered to the empty apartment. They'll read the attachment when they're ready. And when they did, they'd finally understand how irreplaceable I truly was. Alan called again just after breakfast, and this time I picked up. His voice sounded older than I remembered. Sandpaper over something fragile. Mandy, thank you. I won't waste your time. I need you back. Today. Not permanently. As a consultant, name a fair day rate. There it was. The word I'd never heard from them. Fair. I'm not coming back as staff, I said. If I come, it's one day. My rate, my conditions. Understood, he said quickly. What are they? No meetings with HR, no interference. I speak directly to production and engineering, and I make the call on what ships and what doesn't. Also, whoever replaces me gets the documentation I already wrote. Unaltered. Alan exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. Agreed. And Mandy, I'm sorry. I should have known sooner. Let's not do that part, I said gently. Send the contract. I'll review it when I get there. I ended the call and stared at my reflection in the black screen. I didn't feel triumphant. If anything, I felt stern, like a parent who finally stops explaining and lets the stove teach the lesson. I chose a navy blazer, tied my hair back, and tucked my dad's old screwdriver into my bag. Not for show, for balance. The smallest turns. At the building, the guard who'd watched me leave 2 days earlier looked startled. Back already? Not back, I said. Visiting. He handed me a visitor badge like it might explode. Alan met me in the lobby with a manila folder. No entourage, no theatrics. His tie was crooked. His eyes were rimmed red. The contract, he said. Day rate as requested. Direct report to me for the day. Authority on QA decisions. I scanned it. Clean enough. Add this, I said, circling a clause. My documentation goes to production, engineering, and QA today. No filtering. No summaries. He nodded, already texting legal. We walked to the lab. The silence had a shape to it, like a room after an argument. Maya stood at a bench surrounded by failed units, sleeves rolled, jaw set. When she saw me, relief and embarrassment wrestled on her face. Morning, I said. Let's start with what you changed. We reset the master baseline. She grimaced. It made everything worse. It would, I said. You told the system its memory didn't matter. Jordan hovered behind her, hands in pockets. We were drowning. You were thrashing, I said. Different thing. A tech rolled in a cart of cardiac monitors. Batch 49F, he said softly, as if loud was illegal now. Okay, I said, flipping the first unit. We're not chasing green lights today. We're listening. I pointed to the vibration trace. Hear that? I asked Maya. I don't hear anything. You will. Watch the pattern, then the temperature drift. It's not noise. It's a sentence. She leaned closer. It rises just before the thermal check. Because the fan compensation overshoots. The unit's fine, but the false spike trips the fail window, because your window contracted when you reset the baseline. I looked up. The system trusts history more than hope. It's designed that way. Maya's eyes flicked to mine. You did that on purpose. Yes. Hope kills quality. I moved through the protocol the way I'd written it. Stabilize, then tighten, check dampers, calibrate in sequence, not in panic. Verify with a known good unit before touching the thresholds. I let Maya's hands do the work, correcting her grip, showing her where to pause, making her say out loud what she saw. The lab shifted around us, from frantic to focused. The air changed. By mid-morning, the first units passed under the tightened window. The right way, not the lazy way. A small cheer stuttered, then died when people remembered things were still broken. I didn't celebrate. Passing was the floor, not the ceiling. Alan appeared in the doorway. Progress? Some, I said, but it's brittle until the documentation is live. It's going out now, he said. Where do you want it sent? Everywhere. If a person touches a unit, they get the guide. His gaze flicked to the corridor. I followed it. Devin stood there with a folder, expression carefully neutral. He stepped in, clearing his throat. Mandy, he said, good to see you back. I'm not back, I said. I'm working. He angled the folder like a prop. We'll need you in a debrief at 2. HR has... No, I didn't raise my voice. My terms included no meetings with HR. Color rose in his neck. We still need to discuss... What you need, I said, is to deliver the packet attached to my resignation. The one you told everyone was irrelevant. Alan's eyes cut to him. Devin opened his mouth, closed it, and retreated without a word. Maya looked at me, then at Alan. He told us the attachment was boilerplate. Said you were... emotional. Emotional people write 20-page calibration guides, I said dryly. Let's keep working. For the next hours, I taught. Not the trick, the discipline. I drew the flow on a whiteboard, where loops closed, where humans could lie to themselves. I made them run the sequences out of order so they'd feel the wrongness in their hands, not just see it on a screen. I let them fail in the ways the system expected, so the memory of correction would stick when I wasn't there. The lab exhaled together when a clean run stayed clean under stress. That sound, relief earned, has a pitch your bones learn. At 2, Alan called me to his office. He shut the door gently, like noise would break something. "You've stabilized us," he said. "It isn't solved, but it's no longer free fall." "Good," I said. "Then the documentation can take over." He slid a new folder toward me. Heavier, cream paper, embossed. "This is an offer. Director of Quality. Full authority. Compensation at the top of our band, I didn't touch it. I told you my terms. One day. Documentation delivered." Then I decide his shoulders slumped, then straightened. "You're right. I'm asking anyway." "Alan," I said, and the weariness in my own voice surprised me. "It's not just money. It's respect on boring days. It's not having to fight every time I say no." "I can promise culture changes," he said quietly. "Culture doesn't change by promise," I said. "It changes by practice." He nodded, eyes on the window. "Will you think about it?" "I will," I said, "after the line runs without me." Back in the lab, Maya was at the bench with Jordan, narrating the sequence to a junior tech. The rhythm sounded right. The smallest turns. As I packed my bag at the end of the shift, my phone vibrated, a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, then listened in the hallway. "Hi, Mandy. My name is Evelyn. I'm VP of Operations at Helix Care. We've heard about your day. If you're open to a conversation, I'd love to talk about building a quality program that actually listens to you." I stared at the screen, the lab's hum behind me. Replaceable, they'd said. Options, I thought. Tomorrow I'd decide what kind of air I wanted to breathe. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with 2 folders in front of me. One was Alan's, thick with promises and embossed with the company logo I'd once been proud to wear. The other was thinner, just a single page with a phone number scribbled on it. Evelyn from Helix Care. The weight difference was misleading. One folder was full of "we've learned our lesson." The other was full of possibility. I poured myself a glass of wine and stared at both until the edges blurred. My phone buzzed again. Texts from Maya. "We're holding steady. Documentation is helping." "Thank you." "Alan is furious at Devin. Something's coming. Don't disappear on us yet, please." Her words tugged at me more than the folders did. I cared about Maya, Jordan, the techs who'd stayed late when no one asked. But caring about them didn't mean chaining myself to a place that only recognized my worth when the floor caved in. The next morning, I called Evelyn. Her voice was brisk but warm. "Mandy, I'm glad you reached out. I'll be direct. We're growing fast at Helix Care, and we need a quality leader who sees what others miss. Your name's been coming up all week. I pinched the bridge of my nose." "You already heard?" "Industry gossip," she said simply. "Suppliers talk. Clients talk. When a competitor's production grinds to a halt because they ignored their own specialist, people notice." The bluntness almost made me laugh. "And what exactly would you want from me?" "Your system. But more importantly, your mind. We'd hire you as Director of Quality Programs. Full autonomy. Your work would be recognized in patents and credited to you, not buried in a department memo." Her words sliced right through me. Recognized. Credited. Not hidden. "Would I own my work?" I asked. "You'd own it," she said without hesitation. "We'd protect it legally, and you'd benefit from any licensing agreements." For a long moment, I didn't speak. The smallest turns decide what runs and what fails. Maybe this was one of them. Later that day, Alan called again. His voice was tight, controlled. "Mandy, I know you're considering offers. Before you decide, I want you to hear this directly from me. Devin is finished. The board stripped him of decision-making authority this morning." I stayed silent. "You were right," he continued. "The attachment you left should have prevented all of this." He hid it, lied about it. I can't undo the damage, but I can make sure it never happens again. Alan, I said carefully, it's not just Devin. He's a symptom. The disease is pretending people are interchangeable. I understand, he said, voice dropping. That's why the board approved a revised package. Vice President of Quality, reporting directly to me. Triple-year-old salary. A seat at the executive table, I closed my eyes. That was power, influence, a title that could change everything. And yet, part of me recoiled. It was still tied to the place that laughed at me until they choked on their own mistake. That evening, I met Maya for coffee. She looked exhausted, hair pulled back, dark circles under her eyes. But when she saw me, relief softened her face. You saved us, she said simply. I gave you tools, I corrected. You saved yourselves. She shook her head. No, without you, we would have shipped failures. Patients could have been hurt. You kept that from happening, even after they pushed you out. Her words landed heavier than Alan's offer or Evelyn's promise. So what do you want from me, Maya? I asked. Not to forget us, she said. We're not Devin. We care. We need someone who sees the cracks before they break. You've always been that person, I swallowed hard. Caring was dangerous. It made walking away harder. When I got home, another email waited from Evelyn. Formal offer attached. Take your time, but we'd like to move quickly. We believe in building with people who want to be valued, not tolerated. And beneath that, a single line. Don't go back to a place that only noticed your worth when it was too late. I sat on the porch until the sky turned purple, folders spread across my lap. Alan's, promising recognition inside the same walls that once suffocated me. Evelyn's, offering ownership and a clean slate. Maya's quiet plea in the back of my mind. I realized the choice wasn't between two jobs. It was between two versions of myself. The one who accepted belated respect, or the one who claimed her value outright. I closed both folders. Tomorrow, I would decide. But tonight, I let myself breathe. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone else to hand me my worth. It was mine. Always had been. I woke before the alarm, not from anxiety, but from the clarity that shows up when you finally stop bargaining with yourself. I brewed coffee, opened both offers on the table, and wrote 2 emails. To Alan, thank you for the offer and for correcting what you could. I'm declining. This isn't about salary or title. It's about building somewhere that treats quality like oxygen, not overhead. To Evelyn, I accept. On one condition. My methods remain mine. I want the agreement to recognize authorship and allow limited licensing to past employers strictly to protect workers and patients, not management's pride. Her reply arrived before my mug cooled. Agreed on authorship. Drafting language now for a narrow license right. Your call on whether to extend it. I exhaled. Decisions are just turns, I thought. Small, but they change the route. I called Alan next. He answered on the first ring. Mandy? I'm joining Helix Care, I said. I wish it had been different. For what it's worth, I'm willing to license my protocols to you under strict terms. Implementation oversight by production and engineering, quarterly training for the QA team, and a clause that forbids HR from gatekeeping the documentation. If you accept, you can stabilize without gambling with patient safety silent stretched, then the soft scrape of a chair. You're still protecting us, he said. I'm protecting the people who never had a voice in that room, I said, and the patients who will never know our names. He cleared his throat. Send the terms. I'll take them to the board today. I emailed the draft license. Measurable outcomes, renewal contingent on training completion, audit rights if anyone tried to simplify the sequence into a useless checklist. No empire building, no foot on anyone's throat. Just a fair price that reflected real value and a path that left dignity intact. By noon, legal at Helix Care had mirrored the authorship language in my offer. By evening, their contract and my license proposal were both signed. The next morning, Maya texted a single line. "Thank you for not leaving a crater." 2 weeks later, I started at Helix Care. My office wasn't large, but the door was mostly glass. No fortress vibe, no corner kingdom. I met the floor teams first, then the software folks, then the procurement leads who played the quiet game of keeping promises. I pinned a printout above my desk. Quality is the discipline of telling the truth early. No one rolled their eyes. The first task was documentation. Real documentation, not the museum plaque version. We built checklists that told you why before how, and playbooks that included the "when it feels wrong" column that no ISO auditor asks for, but every good tech uses. I hired a quiet kid named Layla who could hear bearings through plastic and a former paramedic who'd seen what close enough looked like when it failed. We fought with data and patience, not volume. And when an early batch of infusion pumps murmured trouble at a threshold everyone else missed, we halted the line before the sunrise shift. We caught it. It never left the building. No drama, just motion that made sense. Mid-quarter, Alan called. "The board approved the license," he said. "We've restarted at controlled capacity." "Devin," he hesitated. "He's been reassigned to vendor paperwork and compliance reporting. He'll be the point of contact for quarterly metrics on your license." I pressed the phone to my shoulder and smiled despite myself. "If he has questions, the documentation is explicit," I said. "Anyone can follow it, if they decide to learn." "Message received," he said quietly. The months settled into a rhythm. Work that respected the truth, teams that argued to get it right instead of to win. On a rainy Thursday, a courier delivered a thick envelope to my office. Midwest's first quarterly report, signed by Devin. It included the metrics I'd specified. Baseline drift variance, false fail rate, corrective action lag. At the bottom, in a hand steadier than mine would have been in his place, a note. Documentation received. Processes updated. Payments remitted as per agreement. No gloating. Just a ledger that finally told the truth. That weekend, I took my daughter to the park. She raced her scooter along the river path while I sat on a bench, the envelope beside me like a closed chapter. A man nearby struggled with a stubborn stroller latch. I leaned over, twisted the catch a quarter turn, and it clicked into place. He looked up, surprised. "How did you know?" "The smallest turns," I said, and felt my father's grin rise in me. Back at work, Layla taped a handwritten sign above the main bench. "We don't ship hope." It made visitors blink, then nod. When the industry conference rolled around, I presented a short talk titled "Designing Systems That Don't Need Heroes." No crescendo, no revenge slideshow. Just steps, examples, the discipline of listening to what the machine and the people were saying before it broke. After, in the hallway, I ran into Alan. He looked tired but lighter. "Your license kept us afloat," he said. "We should have done right sooner." "Do right now," I said. "Make the documentation sacred. Promote the people who tell you no." He nodded. "Devin sends your report to the board personally. I think it hurts, but he does it right." "Good," I said. "Accuracy is a kind of respect." On my way out, a young engineer stopped me by the escalator. "I watched your talk," she blurted. "Last month I told my manager we needed to hold a shipment. He said I was overreacting. I held it anyway." "You made me feel less crazy," I swallowed. "You weren't crazy. You were careful." That night, I wrote a sentence at the end of our team's playbook. Care is not a soft skill. The final license payment of the year hit my account with another packet of metrics and a cover letter. This time from Alan. "We're instituting your training cadence as policy. Documentation will be a release blocker. Thank you for not letting our worst day define our next year." I closed the envelope and put it with the others. A stack not of trophies, but of receipts. Proof that telling the truth early and insisting on terms that last changes more than balance sheets. People still underestimate what they don't understand. They still call careful people difficult until careful is the only thing standing between a patient and an avoidable mistake. But here, in rooms that listen, The work lands. It protects strangers we'll never meet. It tells the story for us. They said they could replace me tomorrow. Maybe they can replace a person. They can't replace a practice. Not one built on small right turns, insisted on every day. And if this story found you at a moment when someone laughed at your worth, don't wait for the room to wake up. Write your terms, protect your work. Choose the places where care is currency, not charity. Then let the results say your name, quarter after quarter, long after the noise dies down. I knew the air had shifted the moment I walked into the break room that Monday morning. My coffee mug, my mug, was gone. 22 years in that building, and the mug had survived everything. 2 office remodels, 3 CEOs, a small kitchen fire, even the time someone mistook it for a measuring cup during a bake-off. But now it sat in the trash, cracked in half, tossed aside like I was already a ghost in my own workplace. That was the first sign. The second came later that day when Daniel Whitmore, our brand new CEO, strolled through the halls like he owned the oxygen. Fresh off the board's vote, full of buzzwords and expensive cologne. He shook hands with the interns, but barely nodded at the people who'd built the company brick by brick. He didn't look at me once. Maybe that should have been comforting. After all, invisibility had always been my armor. People forget that the quiet ones aren't weak. They're watching, recording, remembering. But something about his smile told me invisibility wasn't going to save me this time. We're realigning resources, he said at the company town hall. Future-facing initiatives, bold transformation. Those words never mean what people think. They don't mean innovation. They mean cuts. They mean somebody like me, steady, experienced, loyal, becomes an expense instead of an asset. Daniel started small, the way they always do. Canceling recurring check-ins, redirecting my approvals to junior hires who couldn't tell a purchase order from a lunch receipt. Meetings would mysteriously forget to include me on the invite. Little cuts, paper cuts, the kind that don't kill you outright but bleed you slow. I'd seen it before. New leadership storms in, eager to prove they're worth the salary. They clean house. Not because the house is dirty, but because they need to rearrange the furniture to leave their mark. And people like me, the ones who fix the leaks before anyone notices water on the floor, we don't make good headlines. So I started pulling back. Not sabotaging, just not saving the day as quickly. If someone sent an urgent email at 6 a.m., I didn't answer until 9. If a contract came in missing signatures, I let it sit on the wrong desk for a day or two. And sure enough, the cracks began to show. A payment cycle delayed, a compliance checklist skipped, a client asking why documentation wasn't ready on time. The little fires I used to put out quietly now smoldered long enough for smoke to rise. That's when I noticed Daniel watching me from across the open office one afternoon, eyes sharp, calculating, like he'd already decided my fate. And in that moment, I knew. It wasn't about performance. It was about optics. He wanted younger, cheaper, flashier. He wanted culture alignment. I was just the fossil in his way. I didn't panic. I didn't beg. Because buried deep in the back of my mind was a memory. A meeting from almost 2 decades ago with a junior attorney who rolled his eyes as I insisted on a clause in my original contract. "This is excessive," he'd said at the time. "Good," I'd replied. "Then it won't cost you anything." And so I waited. The termination came on a Thursday morning. Daniel summoned me into the glass-walled conference room, sterile as a hospital. A cardboard box sat on the table, empty, waiting for my belongings. He didn't waste time. "Miranda," he said, voice flat, rehearsed. "We're cutting costs. Your badge. Now no thank you for 2 decades of loyalty. No handshake. Just the script." I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I just opened my laptop, typed one email, and pressed send. Attached was a single file from my cloud folder. Employment_contract_2001.pdf. To my lawyer. Subject: terminated today. Body: see page 19, clause 14C. I closed the laptop gently like I was tucking it in for a nap. 7 minutes later, my phone buzzed. My lawyer had replied all. Not just to me, but to the general counsel's office, the CFO's assistant, and yes, Daniel himself. Attached was my original contract. Highlighted, annotated, airtight. A clause they'd forgotten. One that stated, in the event of involuntary termination after 15 years of continuous service, all unvested equity shall vest immediately at market value on date of termination. The company stock had soared in the last 5 years. My payout? Just over $10 million. That's when the CFO stormed into the room, face red, papers trembling in his hand. Who approved this? He roared. We can't pay this. We can't afford it. Daniel's smirk faltered. The silence that followed was heavy, like the sound of a trapdoor creaking open under his feet. And me? I just sat there, hands folded neatly, heart steady. Because this wasn't revenge. This was protocol. And they had just activated it. The CFO's voice kept bouncing around that glass box long after he left, like the room was still arguing with itself. Daniel tried to keep his jaw steady, but his reflection in the window gave him away. The kind of smile you put on when a photo is taken just as your chair tips over. I didn't fill the silence. I didn't owe it any words. My phone buzzed again. Another reply. All from my lawyer, clean as a scalpel. Acknowledgement of receipt from legal, request for wire instructions, and a line that read, per the contract, acceleration is immediate. No NDA is contemplated. The phrase, no NDA, landed like a teaspoon hitting a bell. Everyone hears it. Everyone looks up. Let me pause for 1 second since we're being honest with each other. If you're still watching and not subscribed, don't be the executive who trusts a summary slide. Hit subscribe. Read the fine print in your own life. Now, back to the building that suddenly remembered my name. I walked out with the box they'd staged for me, not because I needed it, but because it felt polite to let their story finish its sentence. The hallway did that thing it always does when a quiet person becomes loud without raising her voice. Eyes lifted over monitors, chairs swiveled, a cough that sounded like a question. I kept my gaze forward. The elevator dinged once. Doors opened like they'd been waiting for this moment too. Downstairs, I sat in my car and watched emails bloom on my screen. Legal wanted to clarify intent. HR wanted to discuss alternatives. Finance wanted a temperature check on settlement posture. It's a corporate dialect. A lot of words that never touch the ground. I answered none of them. My lawyer already was. What I did do was text Dana in accounts payable, because decency costs nothing and she'd spent years untying knots I should have been called in the first place to untie. I wrote, transition will be handled through counsel. You'll be okay. Backup vendor tokens today. She sent back 3 praying hands and a heart. She always was too generous with emojis. By afternoon, the ripple turned into a current. A former colleague forwarded a screenshot from the executive Slack. Legacy contracts audit. Urgent. Beneath it, someone asked if there were other clauses from the 2000 to 2005 era. That's the part leadership never plans for. If one person asked for a lifeboat 22 years ago, assumption says others did too. The problem isn't me anymore. It's precedent. I made tea at home and placed the cardboard box on the counter. Inside, a stapler, a photo of the office holiday party before the rebrand, 2 pens that only worked if you shook them, and my badge. The badge felt heavier now that nobody could take it from me. I slid it in a drawer next to rubber bands and a tape measure that always retracts too fast. An hour later, my lawyer called. No small talk. He never performs empathy he can't deliver in dollars and enforceable terms. They'll try to renegotiate, he said, because that's how they were trained. But the clause is clean. Your leverage is time and silence. Let them do the math in front of each other. Will they go public? I asked. They'll try not to, he said. If they must, they'll frame it as legacy obligations and hope investors appreciate adult supervision. But their bigger fear isn't your payout. It's the audit your payout forces, not revenge, I said. Protocol. Protocol, he agreed. I could hear paper sliding across his desk. You were right to keep the original countersigned copy. I thought about that conference room from decades ago. The junior attorney who told me no one is terminated after 15 years without a soft landing. I didn't argue then. I asked for a sentence in a document and filed it where future me could find it. There's a difference between paranoia and memory. Only one needs evidence. By evening, texts started arriving from people who'd learned my number through the grapevine. Melissa from legal. Are you okay? Can I do anything? Nico, a junior analyst I'd helped with a report once. Hey, not sure if this is related, but I found a compliance discrepancy in HR's classification archives last week. Should I be worried? I told him to send everything to legal with a read receipt and keep his head down. You don't need to be a hero. You need to remain employed. A recruiter I hadn't heard from in years wrote, "Coffee this week?" I laughed. The timing is always precise when people learn you're suddenly interesting. Around sunset, an email popped in from Daniel's assistant, short and chirpy. Daniel would love a quick chat to align on a path forward. Align. Another word that never touches the ground. My lawyer replied before I could. All communications through counsel. 3 minutes later, the assistant asked for my lawyer's availability tomorrow morning. There's a rhythm to panic. It comes in quick asks and calendar holds labeled temp. Here's the part that made it real for me. Not the money, not the reply all, not the CFO's panic. It was a message from facilities, Eddie. He wrote, "Place feels different without you." We switched the light sensors back to the longer timer. People were waving their arms in the dark. I sat with that for a while. The lights only know to stay on when someone moves. Most of my career had been making systems stay lit without any performative waving. That night, I opened my old onboarding folder for the first time in years. The checklists I wrote, the runbooks for outages, the procurement matrix that explained why vendor A could never replace vendor B without a compliance patch. All of it was labeled plainly, not because I'm tidy, but because confusion charges interest. Somewhere in that building, people were discovering that clarity is not a soft skill. Before bed, I typed a note to myself. Not a manifesto. Just a sentence I wanted to carry into whatever came next. Don't let anger rewrite the facts. It's easy to mythologize what happens when the people in charge learn they've been looking past the person holding the safety pins. But nothing magical happened here. I read something everyone else stopped reading. I kept proof. I asked for help from someone trained to pull the right thread. If there's a message buried in this, it's not get even. It's get exact. You don't need to set the building on fire when the wiring diagram is already public record. In the morning, they would escalate to the board. Someone would say exposure. Someone would say fiduciary. Someone would ask who else had a clause like mine. And while they spoke a language that circled itself, I would pour coffee in a mug that wasn't cracked and wait for a wire transfer that wasn't optional. I didn't fall asleep smiling. I fell asleep tired. The particular tired you feel after carrying something heavy for years and finally putting it down where it belongs. By Tuesday morning, the storm had moved from whispers to tremors. I didn't need an office badge anymore to know what was happening inside. Corporate panic has a scent. It leaks through emails, urgent meeting invites, and those accidental BCCs people send when they're typing too fast. The first came at 7:42 a.m. A former colleague forwarded me a screenshot from an internal Slack channel, accidentally posted in company announcements instead of the private executive thread. The message read, "Legal confirms Miranda's contract is enforceable. CFO estimates $10.2 million equity exposure. All departments audit contracts from 2000 to 2005. Urgent." 3 minutes later, someone deleted it. but not before half the company saw it. That's the thing about digital mistakes. Screenshots outrun shame every time. I poured my coffee, decaf because adrenaline doesn't need help anymore, and sat at the kitchen table watching my phone light up like a slot machine. Messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Miranda, is it true? They really tried to fire you? If you need a reference, let me know. Some of them were sincere. Some were just fishing for gossip. I answered none. Silence was still the loudest language I had. Around 10 a.m., my lawyer called. They'll try settlement, he said. Expect a number far below the contract. They'll dress it up with benefits extensions and confidentiality clauses. Don't blink, I won't, I said. My voice was steady, even to my own ears. I'd built 22 years of scaffolding around being steady. Let me pause here, since you're still with me. If you're watching this and haven't subscribed, don't be the CFO in this story. Don't wait until it's too late to recognize what matters. Hit that subscribe button, tap the like. It helps keep stories like this alive. Back to the collapse. At noon, my phone rang. Caller ID, Richard Heller, CFO. The same man who once cut me off mid-sentence in a budget meeting to ask if we could circle back when it mattered. Now his voice trembled like an overloaded printer. Miranda, he said, we'd like to avoid unnecessary escalation. We value your service. Richard, I interrupted, all communication goes through my lawyer. But I hung up. Not because I was angry, but because nothing useful ever comes after but. That afternoon, the first cracks appeared publicly. An industry forum post popped up from a mid-level investor. Anyone else hearing about unexpected severance liabilities at Whitmore Group? Rumor is legacy contracts weren't reviewed. Another asked bluntly, how many Mirandas are out there? The market doesn't care about names. It cares about risk. And suddenly, I wasn't a person. I was a line item with too many zeros. By evening, another screenshot landed in my inbox, this time from HR's internal Slack. Caitlin, the new HR director who'd slid the box across the table, had written in all caps, "Who approved her termination without contract review?" Underneath, the general counsel replied with one line that froze me. "You did." I pictured her face when she read it. The smirk she'd worn during my exit meeting replaced by the realization that the trap door she opened was under her own feet. Dinner that night was quiet. I microwaved leftover pasta and scrolled through my old files. Compliance reports, vendor matrices, the classification audit I'd written last year that flagged dozens of employees miscategorized as contractors. HR had marked it, reviewed, no action. Now I wondered if Nico, the young analyst, had stumbled on the same document. If so, the equity payout wasn't the board's only problem. The next morning confirmed it. A message from Nico. Legal just pulled my audit trail. They know HR ignored classification issues. Everyone's panicking. Am I safe? I typed back, keep records. Say nothing. You'll be fine because panic loves company, but it eats juniors first. By midweek, the board convened an emergency session. I didn't see it, of course, but another accidental forward found its way to me. A draft slide deck. Title, Legacy Compensation Exposure, Preliminary Findings. Bullet points. Clause 14, C enforceable. Estimated liability, $10.2 million immediate. Potential additional contracts, 6 to 12. Risk of investor disclosure high. At the bottom, someone had written in red, root cause, HR bypassed compliance review. Termination executed without legal rooting. That was Caitlin's signature. Her shortcut. Her arrogance. I didn't smile. It wasn't joy. It was inevitability. That night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the streetlights flicker on. 22 years I had been their invisible backbone, their silent scaffolding. They called me outdated, but they had built their empire on the systems I designed, the protocols I protected, the fine print I had the audacity to read. Now those same systems were turning on them. Not because I sabotaged anything, but because gravity doesn't need sabotage. You pull the wrong beam, and the collapse happens on its own. I whispered to myself, almost like a prayer. Don't get angry. Get exact. The storm wasn't over. It was just beginning. By Thursday morning, the building I'd left behind was rattling like a machine with loose bolts. I didn't need insider access. Panic has a way of broadcasting itself. Vendors started calling me directly. My number must have survived in some contract appendix. One asked, "Miranda, did you archive the backend tokens?" We can't process the payment batch I hadn't. That was never my job. My job was to keep those systems patched, documented, and stable. But when they cut me loose, they also cut loose the one person who knew how to restart the engine when the lights blinked red. By noon, 2 clients flagged failure to provide contractual deliverables. That's corporate language for, we paid. Where's our stuff? Normally, I would have fixed it in minutes. Now I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea, watching the notifications roll in like weather alerts. Let me pause here for 1 second. If you're watching this and haven't subscribed yet, don't wait until your own scaffolding disappears. Hit that subscribe button. Stay prepared. Because silence is only dangerous when you don't know what it's holding up. Back to the unraveling. The first public crack came from an industry blog that posted, "Whitmore Group experiencing operational instability following senior staff departures." Departures, plural. They didn't even know I was the only one gone. That's how invisible I'd been. One person mistaken for many. That evening, my lawyer called. His voice was calm, almost amused. "They're drafting a settlement offer," he said. "Expect a round number, maybe $1 million, wrapped in a confidentiality agreement. They think fear of bad press will make you fold." "They still don't understand," I said. "This isn't about anger. It's about protocol." "Exactly," he replied. "And protocol doesn't negotiate down." The offer arrived the next morning. $1.2 million, 3 months health insurance, and a non-disclosure agreement. My lawyer responded in 4 words. Clause 14, C, no NDA. Within the hour, Richard, the CFO, called again. His voice cracked like static on a weak signal. "Miranda, please, let's be reasonable. If this goes through, the board will have to restructure." "Sounds like a governance issue," I said. He didn't laugh. By Friday afternoon, things had spiraled. A junior HR rep accidentally posted a message in the wrong channel again. "GC confirms there are at least 5 more contracts with acceleration clauses. Immediate liability estimated at $48 million. Board furious, 5 more Mirandas." I wasn't an anomaly. I was precedent. I thought back to that junior attorney years ago who rolled his eyes at me. Maybe 5 others had pushed back the way I had. Maybe they too had quietly insisted on clauses no one thought would matter. Now those forgotten sentences were landmines under the boardroom table. Dinner that night was soup and bread. Simple. I didn't need champagne to celebrate. Watching arrogance catch up with itself was nourishment enough. As the sun went down, another text came in, from Nico, the junior analyst. "They're asking me to explain the compliance report I found." "I'm scared. Stay calm," I wrote back. "Keep your notes. Don't speculate. Tell them exactly what you saw. Because panic makes people exaggerate, and exaggeration is where scapegoats are born." That night, I sat with the cardboard box still sitting on my counter. Inside, 1 stapler, 2 pens, my badge. They thought it was a box of endings. To me, it looked more like a warning label. Handle with care. Contents may destabilize entire structures. On Saturday morning, I opened LinkedIn for the first time in months. Recruiters, investors, consultants. 173 new requests. One message called me the compliance oracle. Another asked if I'd consider speaking at a conference about operational resilience. Funny how quickly a relic becomes an oracle when the lights go out. But I wasn't chasing validation. I was watching gravity do its work. That afternoon, another email reached me by mistake. A draft memo to the board. Immediate requirement, All involuntary terminations above grade level 9 must undergo compliance review, effective immediately. My name wasn't on the memo, but I didn't need it to be. I had become the lesson etched into their protocols. As the weekend closed in, silence filled the hallways of the company I'd once held together. No more culture spotlights, no cheerful updates from HR, just a vacuum where their confidence used to live. And Caitlin? The one who'd smirked as she slid that box across the table? She hadn't posted on Slack all week. No memos, no bullet points, no slogans. She'd gone radio silent, likely buried in a war room, trying to invent a time machine that could undo her signature. But there's no undo button on arrogance. By Sunday evening, my lawyer sent me one final text. They've escalated to the board. Expect a revised offer. Larger. No NDA. They're bleeding and want it quiet. I closed my phone, made another cup of tea, and whispered to myself, don't get angry. Get exact. Because the storm hadn't passed yet. It was only circling closer. By Monday afternoon, the building had that evacuated look, even in photos. A friend sent me a picture from the lobby. No chatter, no music, just reflections in glass and the security guard pretending not to notice executives taking calls in the hallway. You can't photograph a meltdown, but you can catch its posture. My lawyer called first. They've moved past negotiation and into triage, he said. Revised terms incoming. Board level sign-off. There was a pause, papers moving. Prepare for full acceleration per the clause, doubled cash to avoid delay, and, importantly, no NDA. Protocol, I said out of habit. Protocol, he echoed like a benediction. The offer arrived 10 minutes later. It wasn't triumphant. It was clinical. Wire confirmation within 48 hours. Benefits bridge without conditions. No confidentiality or disparagement clauses. A line at the bottom. This agreement resolves all obligations under the original contract without admission of fault. I read it twice, then once more out loud. It wasn't an apology. Corporations don't do apologies, they do math. But the math spoke. Let me pause here for 1 second since you're still with me. If you've made it through this story and haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Don't leave your own fine print unread. Hit subscribe, tap like, and tell someone who needs to hear this. Quiet does not mean weak. Back to the signature. I signed with a digital pen that never shakes. My lawyer countersigned, forwarded, and CC'd the people who prefer carbon copies over accountability. Within minutes, a calendar invite appeared. Transition access, 24 hours. It was funny in a tired way. The systems I kept alive longer than some careers now offered me a goodbye tour. I logged into my old inbox for the last time. The flood was immediate. Requests to pick my brain, to share historical context, to help us understand the procurement matrix. I replied to none of them. I wasn't withholding. I was done. I drafted one email instead. Subject line, final note. I kept it short. To Ops, AP, Support, Legal. You'll be fine if you respect process. Document everything. Don't wave your arms to keep the lights on. Fix the sensor. If you're overruled, write it down. If you need help, ask early. Take care of the place. I won't be watching, but someone will. Miranda, I sent it and logged out. It felt like setting down a box I'd carried too long without saying it was heavy. An hour later, another screenshot reached me. An all-staff email from operations. Effective immediately, any involuntary termination at grade 9 and above requires compliance routing and legal review. Legacy contracts to be archived in a central audited repository. Retraining for HR on classification law. No one wrote my name, but it was there between every line like watermarking. Caitlin disappeared from the org chart that afternoon. No grand announcement, just a sterile message from People Ops. We thank Caitlin for her contributions and wish her the best in her future endeavors. I pictured the cardboard box she once nudged toward me. I wondered who slid it toward her. Maybe no one. Maybe the box packs itself when a signature carries enough weight. The CFO called one last time, this time through my lawyer's line. He didn't posture. "We've processed the wire," he said. "You'll see it by morning." There was a weary honesty to him I hadn't heard before. For what it's worth, this forced us to fix things we should have fixed years ago. It wasn't contrition exactly, but it wasn't spin either. "Good," I said. "Then it won't cost you anything next time." He exhaled. "Fair." When the wire hit, it was numbers on a screen, not fireworks. I made coffee, fed the cat, and paid off the last piece of my mortgage because loose ends are how worry sneaks back in. The money mattered, obviously, but closure mattered more. The quiet certainty that I hadn't needed rage to win. Just records, time, and the right sentence on page 19. Messages kept coming. Recruiters, investors, a conference organizer offering to fly me out to talk about operational resilience, which is a poetic way of saying, don't kick out the person who knows where the breakers are. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I let the possibilities sit like tools on a clean workbench, ready when I am. I took a walk past the building that evening, not to gloat, just to make sure it still existed in the ordinary world. It did. A delivery truck idled. Someone held the door with a foot while balancing coffees. Life doesn't stop for board minutes or settlement wires. It just keeps moving, indifferent and exact. I stood across the street and put my badge in my pocket, the plastic warm from my hand. I didn't drop it in their bin. I took it home. A reminder, not a trophy. Here's the message I promised you. The one under the headline and the numbers and the Slack screenshots. Loyalty is a contract, not a personality trait. It should be read, renewed, and respected by both sides. If someone treats your steadiness like a discount, they're telling you the price they expect to pay later. Believe them and keep your receipts. I didn't burn the place down. I didn't need to. The wiring diagram was public. The process was written. The only thing I did was refuse to be talked out of the paragraph I put there to protect a future version of me who might need it. She did. I'm grateful to her. As the sun dipped behind the glass, I thought about that old mug, the one that started this for me. Cracked, tossed, forgotten. I bought a new one on the way home. Plain, heavy, not fragile. When I poured coffee into it the next morning, it didn't wobble or leak. That's all I wanted, really. Systems that hold. People who read. Work that respects gravity. I won't tell you to fight. I'll tell you to file. I'll tell you to ask for the clause. To keep the countersigned copy. To write the runbook as if one day you'll need to hand it to yourself. Quiet isn't weakness. It's alignment. It's the sound process makes when it works. Don't get angry. Get exact. And if someone slides a box across the table, make sure they also read page 19.